All right. What's up, everyone? What's up, college football fans, quarterback fans? Welcome to the QB Spotlight live show, a live instant reaction recap show. We're going to go over all the quarterback plays from this previous week and from week 6. This is your first time tuning in. As always, thanks. We are just a big quarterback hub. We talk all quarterback-related content, specifically the college football quarterback position, and we're going to do a bunch of recap in the day. We got a lot to get into, a lot of big time plays or big time games and players, from Dillon Gabriel to Quinn Ewers, Shedeur Sanders. We've got a lot of quarterbacks to talk about. And then we're also going to dive in some other quarterbacks that maybe don't get mentioned as much. Again, we talk all things quarterbacks, just a big quarterback hub. We do quarterback breakdowns. We do previews, recaps. Anything related to the quarterback position is all fair game here. We got a lot of fun stuff to get into. If this is your first time tuning in, feel free to ask questions, comments, all that fun stuff. But we are going to dive into it here in just a second. So again, thanks for watching. And if you're watching after the stream, thanks again. Like, share, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. It really does help. What a crazy day yesterday, right? A lot of good quarterback play, a lot of big games, just like the weekend before. So I think I want to dive into the Red River shootout first, right? I mean, that it doesn't get much bigger than that. So let's talk Dillon Gabriel. Let's break down Dillon Gabriel's game and what he was able to do to have success, especially at the very end. And we previewed Dillon Gabriel, right? We talked about what he needed to do. We talked about how much the offense relies on play action, get the run game going, how much the offense relies on deep shots. And we did talk about Gabriel probably going to need to use his legs to beat Texas. And that's exactly what Dillon Gabriel did, essentially, right? Like there was a tweet yesterday, I forgot from who, I wish I could give them credit, but it talked about Gabriel, missing a few throws, not having his it game today, like being off a little bit, right? This was like mid third quarter, fourth quarter before the big drive at the end, but they were saying his legs are just like next level. His legs are really frustrating the defense. So that was exactly true. But even with that, he still made a lot of good plays, right? Even before that last fourth quarter drive, like the reason Oklahoma was in the situation they were in was because of Dillon Gabriel. So Dillon Gabriel, 23 of 38, 285 yards passing, 113 yards on the ground, and then 2 touchdowns. The first passing touchdown came, on the drive, the game-winning touchdown, right? That fourth quarter drive. And I think I'll probably put out a breakdown of that drive and go through the throws because they're pretty impressive throws. Texas are playing pretty off coverage as well, especially to the field side, which I'll show you in the video if I dive into it. But that last drive, Texas wasn't bringing much pressure. They were just bringing the 4 down linemen, and you saw them having off coverage. Like he had a few big throws in the middle of the field to Stoops. He had that one really long throw outside the numbers that receiver was able to break a few tackles and get some extra yards. And then, of course, the final touchdown, his first touchdown pass of the game, which ended up being the game-winning touchdown pass. So just a great drive and did exactly what he was supposed to do, presenting with those coverages, right? And he even used his legs in that drive. Like I think it was a third completion, the big completion to Stoops down the middle of the field. He used his legs to buy time, get the middle, and throw a good ball. So legs were one of the main keys yesterday, right? Over 100 yards rushing touchdown that they capitalized off of Quinn Ewers. Another interesting thing was something we talked about the other day was the explosive plays that they had. I think he had 13 or 14 completions of 20 yards or more downfield, and yesterday they only had 1. Yesterday he was 1 of 2, so only had 2 throws that were over 20 yards in the air to begin with, only 2 attempts. So I think that tells me Texas did a pretty good job preventing that, right? Like he 16 of his 23 completions were 9 yards or less. And so I think 4 of those 9 completions, 3 of those 9 completions came on that last drive. So Texas did a good job keeping everything in front, not letting Dillon Gabriel beat them deep. But with that, he had a few good answers, or more than a few good answers. Is one, he couldn't really rely on play action like he usually has, right? The way the game was flowing, he wasn't able to. We'll get to that in a second. But he also distributed the ball very evenly throughout the entire game. And he was able to use outside the numbers a lot as opposed to middle of the field, which a lot of times in play action passes, RPO schemes, getting the ball out quick and let me system, use the middle of the field. But he used outside the numbers a lot yesterday. So of his 285 yards passing, 163 yards of the passing yards are outside the numbers. And so even though he wasn't on his A game necessarily, throwing the ball at least, he was able to force the defense to defend the whole field because he could complete those passes. There was a lot of long throws he's able to make. I shouldn't say he wasn't on his A game, right? They were just, it was just a really good game, but it was situational football to its best. Like whenever he needed to be on his A game is when he was. But the fact that he's able to use the whole field caused Texas to have to defend the whole field. And I think that played a big role in that last drive. It's another interesting stat too, or interesting interesting percentage of his throws was going into this game, 58% of his dropbacks, 58% of the throws were off play action. They utilized play action a bunch. Well, this was the exact opposite, actually. 58% of his throws in this game was just straight drop back throws. They weren't able to use play action as much. Texas knew it was coming, so Oklahoma had to attack in different ways. And so, with that said, they were able to have success. So, yeah, like we said pregame, Gabriel used his legs. Gabriel, that was a key, and it ended up being big, having 100 yards rushing and a touchdown. But we talked about will Oklahoma be able to, if Texas takes away the run game or Texas takes away the play action ability, will they be able to win? And the answer was yes. Will they be able to win without the explosive plays? The answer was yes, right? There wasn't a bunch of explosive plays, just that one. The majority of the dropbacks were straight drops. They didn't use a bunch of play action. And he was able to distribute the ball all over the field. So even though Texas did a good job defensively and they were able to take away a lot of what Oklahoma's offense is all about and what Gabriel is all about, they still found a way to win. So that was my biggest kind of takeaway from Gabriel. Yeah, that fourth quarter drive was awesome. Like that's going to be one of the most talked about drives in the Red River Shootout in the history. And I'm probably going to do a deep dive on that drive. Maybe I'll put it out tonight. Shameless little plug if anyone wants to watch it. But he found a way to win, even when they were off on some throws, even when the offense didn't click the whole game, right? Especially like kind of towards the end, they weren't clicking as much until the very end of the game. But these are the best type of games to win, the best type of games to play. Any quarterback can have a good game or can be successful whenever everything is going right. You know what I mean? Like, or it's easy to have a good fourth quarter when things are going right. But whenever it's, not up and down because you played a really good game, but whenever whenever you're not hitting explosive plays, whenever the offense isn't doing stuff that the offense is used to doing, that's when those type of games are the best games as a quarterback because you're able to figure out a way, you find a way to win, and that's exactly what Dillon Gabriel did. So those are the best type of games, right? So big keys, big takeaways. He found a way to win. Texas took away the deep balls, no big deal. Texas, made them go straight drop back passes, no big deal. Dillon Gabriel was able to hit a lot of short completions, which eventually was able to be enough to win the game. So great job overall by Dillon Gabriel. Really, really fun game to watch, of course. But yeah, that fourth quarter drive we talked about for a long time. Again, if y'all watching, let us know your thoughts, comments, all that fun stuff below. Let's talk about Quinn Ewers some too, because I thought Quinn Ewers played a really good game after that first quarter, right? After those 2 interceptions, he played a really good game. After that second pick, when they were in territory looking like they're about to score, after that second pick, I wrote down, and I was taking my notes. I'm a geek. All the quarterbacks that we talk about, I'll take notes and watch on Saturdays. But I wrote down, how will he respond? How is he going to respond? And well, he responded exactly how a potential first-round NFL quarterback would, and that's by throwing 19 straight completions or whatever the number was, right? 19 straight completions. I know he had that fumble on the run, but still, I thought he played an excellent game after that interception. Like he bounced back big time. Like his first 3 or 4 completions were all behind the line of scrimmage too, right? And then he got in a rhythm. Like he lived on those those like intermediate range throws, 10 to 19 yards throws. According to PFF, he was 11 of 11 on throws between 10 and 19 yards. And those are throws OU was giving him, and those are the throws he was taking. Like Quinn Ewers played his ass off, essentially, right? Played his ass off, bounced back. Like we were talking about with Gabriel being able to find a way to win whenever maybe you don't have your best stuff, essentially. That's kind of what Quinn Ewers was able to do. Like he found a way to bounce back after a rough start. Like those are the best type of performances. I know they didn't get the win, and Texas fans, surely aren't happy about that, of course. But I still thought he played great, right? He was 31 of 37, 347 yards passing, touchdown. Had those 2 picks we talked about. Bad picks, right? Especially that first pick. Bad pick. No way around it. Bad pick. The other pick, the ball threw kind of high. Then, hard hit. Who was that to? Sanders, I believe. The tight end, number 0, hard hit, ball bounced up. Oh, you got it. And that fumble. Like, that's bad. I get it. Bad. But overall, 19 straight completions, able to live on those intermediate type throws. He even hit in some deep throws, too. You know what I mean? Like, he had 2 20-plus yards downfield. Like, he had more than Dillon Gabriel did, and that's part of OU's MO in their offense. And he was able to hit on some of those big throws, too. And a lot of that, I think, came from, especially early in the game, they were able to hit on, or they got the ball out super quick. A lot of balls behind the line of scrimmage, like 9 of Quinn's completions are behind the line of scrimmage. I think that's what kind of helped set up some of those intermediate type throws, and he distributed the ball really well. Like I thought Quinn just played great. I thought it's not going to get talked about as much because they lost, and I get it. And you should talk about Gabriel in that fourth quarter drive, which we just did. But I thought overall, like the ability to bounce back, like that's what NFL teams want to see. They want to see you struggle. They want to see you fight through some adversity and bounce back. And that's exactly what he did. Again, 31 on 37, 347 yards passing, a touchdown, 2 picks, and 2 interceptions. I'm sorry, I just said that right. 2 interceptions and that fumble on that run. So, like I said, I wrote down how will he respond, and he responded and came back and had Texas in a position to win that game. So overall, just probably one of the best Red River shootouts that I can remember watching. And we're here in Austin, so we watch all of them. Growing up in Texas, that's what you do. One of the best games overall. And I know there have been some more exciting games that are like 45-44, big comebacks, three touchdowns, like that Kyler Murray game. He had like 3 touchdowns in a row to get him back in the game. But just overall, as far as the teams being even, like this game could have gone either way. This is probably gonna be the Big 12 championship. Whoever wins that game is probably going to the college football playoffs, right? But again, we don't talk much college football playoffs, just talk quarterbacks. Again, Dillon Gabriel, Quinn Ewers, 2 of the best quarterback performances overall, not based this on stats, but based on like situational football, the ability to bounce back and the ability to fight through some adversity. And then with Gabriel, just the ability to find a way to win. So let's keep going. Let's talk about Texas A&M and Alabama. Let's talk about those 2 quarterbacks. Let's talk about Jalen Milroe, and then we'll talk about some Max Johnson. So Jalen Milroe. And before we get into Jalen Milroe, I think we got to give a shout out to both defenses, because both defenses played good enough for either team to win. I think Alabama had 5 sacks on Johnson, and Texas A&M had 6 sacks on Jalen Milroe. But Milroe was 21 of 33 for 321 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and 1 pick. And there were a few drops too. There are a few drops, so those numbers could have been even better. But my biggest takeaway was, if someone told me or someone told you that Milroe would have negative 31 yards rushing and Bama would still win, there's no way you'd believe that, right? You'd be like, no, Milroe's going to have to use his legs to win. He's the best athlete in the field. He's going to have to use his legs. Well, he didn't have to use his legs. He used his arm, and he did exactly what everyone knows he's good at. That's the big explosive plays, the ability to push the ball downfield. So A&M knew his strength. Of course, everyone talks about what his strength is, and that's throwing the football deep and showcasing that strong arm. They knew his strength, and they still couldn't stop it. And of course, Burton went off. The receiver went nuts, made some really good catches as well. But that's because Milroe gave him a chance. So Milroe was 6 of 8 for 200 yards passing and 2 touchdowns on balls thrown 20 yards or more in there. That's pretty incredible. I don't know the highest number of 20-yard throws of balls thrown 20 yards or more in the air this year. That's got to be up there for top few, like for sure. 2 to 4 range is usually like, okay, that's pretty decent, right? So 6 is really good, especially to only throw 8 of them and complete 6 of them. So 200 yards of his 321 yards came on those 6 completions, and then 2 of the touchdowns did as well. Another kind of thing that I think is easy to overlook is, I think he's getting better each game. Like, everyone is always going to be like hypercritical on the interceptions, or when he misses some short yardage throws, or when he's inaccurate in some throws, right? But every quarterback misses, right? Every quarterback's inaccurate at times. Like, if you give the stat line that we just gave Jalen Milroe to any quarterback, they would take it 10 times out of 10 to throw like that. So yeah, of course, still stuff to improve, but each week I feel like he is. And you saw that, I think, with those short throws. Like, he had, what was his, I don't have it exactly, but I think he was a 9 of 12 on throws 0 to 9 yards, which, great, he should be able to do that, yada yada, I get it, but that's the area that he needs to improve on. He is. So he was 9 of 12 in that short yard range. I think that did lead to some success in those deep balls. Now, he had some deep throws early, but throughout the game, he was able to hit some of these short throws that I think led to those deep throws. We talked about that in the pregame breakdown, that the short throws, like, would A&M is going to force Miller to make those short throws, and he did. But even with that, he was able to hit those deep balls, even with A&M trying to prevent that and knowing that. Another big takeaway from me, which I thought was an interesting stat. So most quarterbacks, middle of the field, throwing the ball between the numbers is where the majority of the yards passing are going to lie. Now, I'm not saying it's always going to be, 90% in the middle of the field, 10% out. You want it to be somewhat even, for sure. But throwing outside the numbers is typically tougher for any quarterback. Right? Typically, you're going to see quarterbacks be more middle of the field and more inside the numbers, at least. You can still throw left and right and be inside the numbers, and not necessarily middle of the field. But outside the numbers can be tough. So usually you're going to have more yards between the numbers and outside numbers because of the tough throws. Well, Jalen Milroe, only 93 of his 321 yards came between the numbers, came like middle field-ish, right? So 220-ish yards passing or 210-ish yards, 220, 230 yards passing came outside the numbers. Really, really hard throws. The majority of his passing yards came outside the numbers. those long throws are tough, and most defenses take that into consideration when they're defending, but they really don't put much stock in most quarterbacks being able to make some of those throws. But Jalen Milroe was able to, right? Like that's a big deal. And those type of throws can just kill defenses. And that's exactly what Jalen Milroe did. So those tough throws, not just the deep throws that were the explosive plays, but just the throws out to the numbers in general, which a lot of the deep throws were, but still just the ability to throw that type of distance on the field and be accurate is an impressive feat. So I think Jalen Milroe played great. I think you're seeing improvement each and every game, in the fact that he had negative 31 yards rushing, but did this much damage in the air against a really good Texas A&M defense. Like A&M's defense is legit. Like they're stout. Against a really good A&M defense is just that much more impressive. So I think Jalen Milroe overall takeaway is one. Got a bug. Excuse me. Is one. He's able to continue to perform and be successful at what he's good at, the deep throws. But you saw him take steps. You saw him hit those kind of shorter throws. And then he didn't have his legs. Of course, he had his legs, but A&M took away his ability to run, and he found a way to win, right? So I think that's a kudos to Jalen Milroe. Really, really good game. Let's see. Colin Boone in the comments talking about Jalen Milroe, A&M fan, friend of the show. I was watching. Let's see what Colin had to say. A&M's game plan was to make Milroe hit those throws, and he did it. I still think the defense did enough to win the game, but that's not the same Milroe we saw week 2. 100%, Colin. And it's 100% exactly what A&M did, is they said, hey, hit these throws and you'll beat us. And he hit those throws. But A&M's defense played good enough to win. Anytime you have 6 sacks, anytime a running quarterback has negative 31 yards rushing, usually you're going to win that game. Defensively, you played good enough to win. But some of those throws Milroe made are NFL-type throws. There's a reason why he was a huge recruit. There's a reason why he was such a highly touted recruit. It's not just because he was a really good athlete. It's because he can throw the damn football and throw it really well, right? It's just that consistency factor which he's shown to be able to improve on over time. So let's talk some Max Johnson, Colin. We'll get into some Max Johnson. I know me and Colin talked about Max Johnson over Twitter some. Excuse me, I got a fly flying around. I apologize. But let's talk Max Johnson. Max Johnson overall actually played a fairly decent game. 14-25, 239 yards passing, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. I thought early on, like if he could have played how he played in the first quarter early on, then A&M probably wins that game. Consistently, they weren't able to have the drives the third quarter, that they were able to have the drives in the first half. Like early on in the game, Max Johnson had some really nice throws. Now, Alabama gave him these throws. He's underneath crossing routes, but he hit them, right? So several third down throws. So I thought early on, Max Johnson played pretty good, especially in those throws in the crossing. Like I thought he played pretty good early on. Third quarter, they really weren't able to do that much. In the fourth quarter, that blocked field goal, they just weren't able to find a rhythm that they had in the first half. But overall, I still thought Johnson played good enough to win. He hit in some deep balls too. He had 3 completions of 20 yards or more, but over the ball throwing 20 yards or more downfield. So just to me, and I won't talk too much Max Johnson today, unless any specific questions or stuff y'all want to get into. But overall, it was just a consistency factor for me and for Max Johnson. And you got to give credit to Alabama's defense. They got a lot of pressure on them. They had, 5 sacks, I believe. Was it 5 sacks? What did I say? Yeah, Bama had 5 sacks. They got to Max Johnson. Johnson wasn't able to use his legs like he did in the Arkansas game, right? And actually, Colin made up a good point. We were talking about this the other day about Johnson needing to kind of have a pathway or runway to get going. He just wasn't able to do that. A lot of different reasons why. But again, Max Johnson, those stats, you're a backup quarterback in the SEC and you're 14-25 for 239 against one of the best defenses in the nation. Like you take that. Like that's good enough to win. He kept you in the ball game. There's other factors that played into Alabama being able to win. All right, so let's keep going on. Let's dive into probably my favorite quarterback to watch right now, and that's Jayden Daniels, LSU quarterback. Jayden Daniels is playing potential first round pick football right now. Like it's unreal. It's more than just running the ball. Now this game he used his legs more, at least early on, than he did in the previous games. And the passing game it didn't take a while to get going. It was going. It was just the run game was so successful for LSU. They didn't really use the pass game, the deep pass game, until maybe second half or so. But Jayden Daniels overall is just playing such good, high-quality football. He's probably arguably the best quarterback in the SEC. And we're gonna get into that topic at the end of the show, essentially. But Jayden Daniels is arguably the best quarterback in the SEC right now. All right, so against Mizzou, and they're able to come back and beat Mizzou by 10, I think, thanks to a pick 6 at the end, 10 or 9, whatever it was. But Jayden Daniels against Mizzou was 15-21, 259 yards passing, 3 touchdown passes, 130 on the ground, and another touchdown on the ground. Like, those numbers are unreal, but compared to Daniel's last few games, you're just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, it's a little lower than usual. You know what I mean? Like, you've gotten used to Jayden Daniels putting these huge games. He's also probably the toughest quarterback I've seen this year. One of the toughest quarterbacks I've had the opportunity to watch play. I mean, he's as tough as nails, right? It's unreal, and especially if you saw the hit he took yesterday. I don't know the exact bruise or kind of wasn't injured because he came back in, but I don't know the exact details of the hit he took, but it looked like a ribs. That's what they were kind of talking about in the broadcast. It looked like the ribs, and anyone that's had a rib injury knows how tough it is to play with bruised ribs. It's excruciating. Anytime you laugh or cough, like, the ribs just like make you want to fall down in pain. And he was playing a freaking football game with some type of injury related to that, I believe, right? But regardless of what it was, one of the toughest quarterbacks I've seen, and he led that comeback for LSU under those conditions. I mean, it was unreal, especially that fourth quarter comeback. All right, so let's talk about in detail what he was able to do and how he was able to have so much success. Of course, the run game and I mean, what's the running back's name for LSU? Excuse me, Logan something or something Logan. Regardless, he went off. Jayden Daniels went off. I mean, the run game was going, and then once you start passing, the pass game was going. And they lived in the majority. They lived in the middle of the field. The majority of all their yards came in the middle of the field, passing, running. I mean, it always looked like there was no safety. It looked like the backers always cleared, and they was able to have a lane running or throwing, right? Out of Jayden Daniels' 259 yards passing, he had a $186 throwing middle of the field or between the numbers. He was 10 of 12, so of his 15 completions, 10 of them came between the numbers, middle of the field. And it's just a great example of taking what Mizzou gave him. Mizzou gave him the middle of the field. He was like, sweet, no big deal. I'm going to take this every freaking play. Like, middle of the field, you prefer that as a quarterback. It can be tough at times if there's like a lot of traffic, but the throw's a lot closer, middle of the field, right? Now, he had some deep throws still, but he lived in the middle of the field. And then the biggest takeaway, I think, for Daniels is overall this season is his accuracy. He's as accurate as any quarterback, if not every quarterback in freaking college football right now. I don't know if he's the most accurate quarterback or not. I don't have those stats, but he's got to be up there. There were a few drops as well, too, by his stud receivers. So he could have very well easily been 17 of 21, 18 of 21. I can't remember if there was 2 or 3, but there were several drops as well. So the numbers could have been even better. So he's accurate pushing the ball downfield, accurate in short passes. I mean, he was 4 or 5 on balls thrown 20 yards or more downfield. That's insane. And it's not like this is the first time for those numbers to appear. Like, those type of numbers have been happening game after game after game this season. I mean, it's been unreal for Jayden Daniels. And it's not like the other throws are a bunch of screens. Like, he only had 1 pass behind the line of scrimmage. You heard me talk about some of these other quarterbacks that had 9 passes behind the line of scrimmage, 6 passes behind the line of scrimmage. Well, not Jayden Daniels. He had 1 pass behind the line of scrimmage. The rest were downfield, with 4 of those passes being 20 yards or more. And he's freaking 15 and 21, should have been 17, 18, and 21. So the accuracy level is off the charts for Jayden Daniels right now. And I think a lot of people are taking note of that and are able to realize that. But it's been awesome. Second half, the passing numbers really took off. And, those last drives in the fourth quarter were able to lead them to victory, right? Kudos to LSU and finding a way to win after it looked like, oh my gosh, I don't know if they're gonna be able to pull this out, especially when they were down 25-17. They were down 22-7, 25-17. Then LSU found a way to get back into it. But yeah, Jayden Daniels, one of the toughest quarterbacks I've seen. The accuracy is off the charts, and it's not just short type throws. He's throwing the ball deep, and he's got several NFL receivers to be on the other end of that. Let's talk some Brady Cook too, from the Mizzou quarterback. We won't spend too much time on Brady Cook, but I still think Brady Cook is playing some really good football or playing some really good quarterback right now. One of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, top 5, whatever you want to debate, but he's playing good enough to be up in that conversation. He was 30 of 47 for 411 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. One of those interceptions was that pick 6 at the end of the game. But I thought he played just a great game as well. Now LSU's defense is giving up those type of games to everyone, it seems. But still, I think Cook was leading the league in passes thrown without interception until this game, I believe. Don't quote me. Go back and check that. I don't think we have many Mizzou fans that watch. Maybe they will this game, but or this one. But regardless, he's playing really good football. It was an incredible start to the game, like an incredible start for Mizzou, for Brady Cook. Made some really nice throws. Then the second half, they slowed down enough for LSU to take the lead. And then LSU's defense was able to do just enough, and they had some mishaps. The bad snap on one of the last drives, and they just weren't able to be consistently productive as they were in the first half. But overall, I think Brady Cook is a hell of a quarterback and playing some really good football. All right, we'll keep chugging along here. Two of the quarterbacks to get into that we'll deep dive on. Then we're going to hit on a few other quarterbacks. But again, any questions, any quarterbacks you want to talk about, let us know in the comments below. I know we're kind of lighter than usual. That's okay. We'll keep chugging along. And if you're watching this video after the live, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. It does help. And let us know if there's a specific quarterback next time you want to talk about or dive into on a deeper level. All right, so who do you say we're going to talk about next? Let's see. Okay, Carson Beck. All right, quarterback I've been really excited to talk about. Quarterback who had his best game of the season, best game of his career, who's been taking steps each and every game, and he really showcased the game today, or he really showcased his ability today. I came away after watching the game today, and I was wondering, is he the best quarterback in the SEC? Maybe it's not being talked about yet, but if he has another game or two like he played against Kentucky, it definitely will be, right? Best quarterback in the SEC. It's up for debate right now, but I think it's, you have Daniels, maybe Carson Beck, Spencer Rattler. Like you got a few quarterbacks right now playing at that level. That's another conversation for that time, but I think it's worth noting for Carson Beck. So let's talk Beck's game. 28 of 35, 389 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, and there were 2 drops too. So those numbers could have been even better. Just like we talked about Jayden Daniels, those numbers could have been even better, maybe even another touchdown. I think one of those passes was actually in the end zone. I think it was Bowers. Correct me if I'm wrong if you're a Georgia fan, but I think it was. But anyways, regardless who it was, those numbers could have been even better for Carson Beck. And the biggest takeaway watching this Georgia offense and Carson Beck was they started fast. That was like the big knock, right, against Georgia so far this season was, they're starting slow, whatever. I don't know, maybe they were just taking a little while to get the offense figured out. You got a new quarterback, right? You're figuring out some new stuff. You got new pieces in play. Maybe we're just taking a little while to get it figured out. And you go against, everyone's talking about the Kentucky defense, this and that. Well, they could have, I don't have the exact final score in front of me, but if they kept Carson Beck in the fourth quarter, they could have scored more touchdowns. Like Kentucky's defense had no answer for them. And that's largely because Carson Beck was so freaking accurate. It was able to make every type of throw and different types of throws as well. But before I keep going on Carson Beck, I did put this note here, and we need to give a shout out and some love to the offensive line. Georgia's offensive line was unreal. I mean, unreal. Carson Beck had all the time in the world to throw. Out of all his dropbacks, again, he had 35 attempts, I think so 36, 37 dropbacks, whatever the total dropbacks was. Only one dropback he had pressure. That's unreal. He had all day to throw. And if you give a quarterback like Beck all day to throw, well, he's going to do exactly what he just did to you against Kentucky. This accurate, right? The offensive line was unreal. That led to so much accuracy. Man, that offensive line, that's great. But Carson Beck did exactly what an elite level quarterback is going to do if you have that type of protection in front of you. It's going to dice you up. So of the six of his 7 incompletions came on deep throws. So that tells me there's only one throw that wasn't 20 yards in the air or less that was incomplete. That's pretty freaking accurate, right? And he was 5 of 11 of 20 yards or more, of throwing the ball 20 yards or more downfield, $161 and 2 touchdowns. But 5 of 11, 20 yards or more downfield, 7 incompletions in total, had 2 drops. And again, 6 of the 7 incompletions were those deep throws, explosive throws, and 1 came on an interception, right? So he was able to hit a bunch of short stuff, deep stuff. Like typically, if you're talking football 101, you say, okay, short game to set up the deep game. Well, he didn't need to do that. Like early on in the game, it was deep throwing. Like early on in the game, he was taking those shots, doing it from the very start, from the very get-go. I mean, he was able to do anything like we talked about. The biggest success he had on, the biggest type of throws he had on was play action, though. And that was working from the very jump. Every single touchdown of Carson Beck's from Kentucky came on play action. So 4 touchdowns are off play action. Usually you're like, okay, let's set up the run game, let's get some play action going, and then that will help the pass game. It's kind of the opposite. The play action was working right from the get-go, and that helped the run game get going, and that had some deep passes get going. He was 13 of 14 for 4 touchdowns, 214 yards passing off play action. So he had 389 yards passing in total, and 214 yards were off play action. The play action literally helped set up the run game. So Carson Beck, I think after watching this performance, he's got to be talked about as one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, especially if he has another game or two like this in a row. They haven't looked too much into the schedule, coming up, but now they're going to be starting to play a few more SEC East teams, and so you can anticipate hopefully some more games like this. And he had a good game against Auburn last week too, right? Not to get too off topic, recapping week 6, but he was a big reason why they were able to beat Auburn that last drive, those passes to Brock Bowers. And then it's almost like he picked up where he left off against Auburn. So great game overall for Carson Beck. We're playing really good quarterback. That was really fun to watch. If you didn't watch Carson Beck yesterday, go back and watch that, especially if you're a quarterback junkie, especially if you're a college football junkie. Go back and watch Carson Beck's game from yesterday. It was a clinic on what a quarterback should do and how a quarterback should run an offense. Again, shout out the offensive line. Only one drop back with pressure out of the 36, 37 dropbacks that he had. Great job by Carson Beck. Okay, one more quarterback that we'll kind of do a deep dive on, and then we'll hit up a few guys just real quick that we want to show some love. But last quarterback we'll talk about in a deeper level, and that's Colorado quarterback Spencer Sanders. We got to talk about Spencer Sanders, right? You can't do a college football content show without talking about Colorado football. But we've been talking about Spencer Sanders, since he transferred to Colorado. So we want to continue to do that, even though it wasn't a huge game. I still think there's a lot of noteworthy stuff to take away from Spencer Sanders' performance against Arizona State. Kudos to Arizona State. First and foremost, they had 5 sacks. The defense came ready to play, and we talked about in the preview video. We talked about Arizona State's defense being able to slow down some really good teams. We talked about where their defense may not be elite, their defense is the strength of their team. They slowed down Caleb Williams at times. Now USC ended up scoring 42 points against them. I think Williams had 5 total touchdowns, but I think they had like 2 quarters without scoring a point. So Arizona's defense plays pretty stout and plays pretty hard. And you were watching the game yesterday. It's on Pac-12, so we had to illegally stream it, but go back and try to find the game on YouTube if you can. But that place was rocking. Like, it was a pretty hostile environment. So kudos to Arizona State, right? All right, so let's talk Shedeur Sanders now. 26-42, 239 yards passing, 1 touchdown. And we're going to dive into some numbers and some details, but kind of like how we talked about with Dillon Gabriel, like my biggest takeaway from Sanders, especially in this game, but if you look the whole season, is just situational awareness, a situational football player. You want to be successful. You want to be better in situations that matter than in situations that maybe don't matter, just in between the 20s and you can't score, right? Or you can play whenever there's not pressure, but when pressure's on, you can't, right? My biggest takeaway from Sanders is situational football, something that he's excellent at doing, and has been excellent so far showing, right? When the situations matter, when a big play needs to happen, he's able to make those plays happen. And these are the type of games I think make you great. And not of course, the big games against the USCs and TCU at the beginning of the game, right? Like, at the beginning of the season, like, of course, those big games make you great, and that helps. But the games that maybe don't get as much hype, like this game here, the games that maybe you don't have your A game, the team doesn't have your A game, you're off to a slow start again. Arizona State just tied it up at the end of the game. You're like, they have all the momentum. These games make you great where you can just click. Right, this is the Tom Brady effect, the Tom Brady mode. Not to compare it to Tom Brady again, or kind of overuse that phrase that's been thrown around. Brady, go Brady, or whatever it is. But it really is where the game can not be going so great, and all of a sudden it just clicks. That's what I think happened with Shedeur Sanders yesterday in Arizona State. He just found a way to win yesterday. So let's talk a little more about it, because there's obviously pressure again. But the fourth quarter, of course, the fourth quarter is going to get talked about. You had some really big third down conversions. You had 13 points in the fourth quarter, excuse me. You had that big drive at the very end, of the big play at least, that led to the game-winning field goal. But in my opinion, where they won that game was the touchdown drive right before the first half ended. That's where I think Colorado won the game, and that's an example of the situational football. Like, when it matters, when they scored. So they scored right before the first half ended. Big situation. And then the very end of the game, Sanders was able to hit that deep throw at the beginning of the drive, and that got them into field goal range, and then they were able to kick the field goal. Those situations matter. But I think that drive by Sanders and the team, of course, but led by Sanders at the end of the first half, is a reason why, or one of the biggest reasons why they won. Because nothing was really working offensively for the Buffs, right? Like Arizona State, we talked about the defense, they played great. Nothing was really working for Colorado. I think they only had 56 yards rushing on like 30-something attempts. And Sanders was sacked 5 times. So I think he had -17 because of all those sacks. So even if you give those numbers back, even if you give those sack yardage back, you still have 70-something yards rushing on 30-something attempts, or 30-something carries. So just nothing was really working. They weren't able to really get into a rhythm. It was almost like the Colorado State game, right? Not able to get into a rhythm. Their offense has been so successful in certain things, it wasn't clicking. Like the deep balls that Sanders is so good at, 20 yards or more downfield, they were only 2 of 8. But the situation, right? One of those throws was that last drive that led to the game-winning field goal. So that's what I mean when I talk about situational football. While nothing's really working, but when it did is when it mattered. But again, only 2 of 8 for 20 yards downfield. 5.7 yards per attempt was the lowest of the season by far, maybe except against Oregon. So don't quote me on that. Go back and check Oregon, but I'm pretty sure it was the lowest of the season. If not, it was the second lowest. But when it mattered, he was able to find a way. And I think the biggest takeaway, the biggest questions, I think, after this game is you still have to find a way against the pressure. I don't know what that looks like. I'm not that smart, just some random guy on YouTube talking, right? But this was the first game, like Shedeur Sanders, again, take away Oregon. This was the first game, besides Oregon, that Shedeur Sanders wasn't able to have the success he usually has under pressure. He's been really good under pressure because they've had a lot of pressure. I think almost 40% of his dropbacks were he was under pressure. I think it was 39 point something. And he was only 4-14 throwing for 45 yards. Now, every quarterback, their level of play is going to be lower against pressure. But Sanders, a lot of his numbers have looked like, I think going into the last week, he was like 21 or 35 against pressure, touchdowns, like pushing the ball downfield successfully, like having a lot of success against pressure in his face. But this was the first game that there was just not a lot of success came from it, right? They got pressure without blitzing. So they only blitzed 10% of his dropbacks, but they got pressure nearly 40% of the dropbacks. They were getting pressure with just 4 guys. So I think you got to find a way, whether it's getting the ball out quick, push the ball downfield early, like whatever it is. I mean, we talk about it every week. We'll probably talk about it again this week, but you got to find a way to slow down the pressure, whatever it looks like. But still, they found a way to win. Kudos to Arizona State for playing hard. Kudos to Shedeur Sanders and Colorado offense for finding a way to win in just situational football. Like the play action wasn't able to get going because the run game wasn't able to get going. So it was, again, relying on Shedeur Sanders, just straight dropbacks to win. He was able to find a way. So, again, biggest takeaway for Shedeur Sanders is situational football, being elite when the situation is called for it. That's exactly what he was able to do. All right, if you're watching this video still, like, subscribe, all that stuff, and let us know in the comments below your thoughts. If you're rewatching this video not live, thanks for watching. If it's the first time, we're just a big quarterback hub. We talk all things quarterback, so let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's hit on a few of the quarterbacks before we get out of here. All right, DJU, Oregon State, big game for him. 5 touchdowns. He was like 19 to 24 or something crazy like that. Was accurate. Just did a great job. Led Oregon State to a W. So good to see DJU sitting in kind of a bounce back game. I know they've still been winning, but he hasn't played as good as the beginning of the season. And this was a huge game for him with 5 tutties. So good job for it, DJU. Another quarterback we got to give some love to, Arizona quarterback Noah Fifta. I'm pronouncing that right. I had the game on mute when I was watching some of it, and admittedly, I really didn't watch that much. I fell asleep. But huge game. Almost beat USC, had 5 touchdowns. So he did enough to win, right? He did enough to win the game. We got to give him some love. Great job by him with 5 touchdowns. Almost had the upset on USC. And then Caleb Williams found a way to win. 3 touchdowns on the ground. I mean, the offense for USC didn't even really do that great yesterday. Just they found a way to win and had all those overtime scores to win. Of course, got to give some love to Drake May, UNC quarterback. 442 yards passing, 3 passing touchdowns, 1 touchdown on the ground. And they're huge win, not like huge win as far as like implications go, but just they won like 40-7 against Syracuse. So a big win that he was able to kind of sit and relax in the 4th quarter and watch the backup play. Drake May's playing some really good football as of late, some really good quarterback. They got some big games coming up to watch too, North Carolina. All right, let's hit on a few G5 quarterbacks, and then we'll get out of here. If there's any quarterbacks y'all want to hit on before we end this, let us know now. And if you're, again, rewatching this, excuse me, can't talk. If you're rewatching this, let us know who you want to talk about next time. We'll be doing some more live shows. We're going to do a show just dedicated to some G5 quarterbacks, and then we're going to do these previews and the preview show coming up on Wednesday, and we'll do these recaps on every Sunday. So last little segment we'll get into, Frank Harris, quarterback for UTSA, coming back off being injured some. Big win against Temple, 350-ish yards passing. Nice to see him back, 25-33. And then Kurt Warner's son, EJ Warner. It is EJ, right? Sorry if I'm missing them. I'm pretty sure. But regardless, huge game for Temple. He had 5 touchdowns passing, over 400 yards passing. Really good game overall for him. And it wasn't just like they scored some garbage time, scored at the end. Like it was a back and forth game. UTC was able to pull away, but Temple was still able to keep those shots fired. So good game for him. And then we got Nathan Rourke for Ohio. Another great game, always best quarterback in the MAC, 300 yards passing or so, a couple touchdowns, playing really good football. Good to see him bounce back from an early season injury. All right, then we got Zeno from UAB had a big game in their win against South Florida. Good bounce back game for UAB. They needed that. Looked good. Zion Chris too for Louisiana, and really big game against Texas State. Texas State played good enough to win that game, but Zion Chris, young quarterback, 13 to 17 throwing, really efficient throwing. Made some plays on the ground as well. I think 3 total touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. But that's a quarterback. If you watch the Sun Belt, like Sun Belt's got so many good quarterbacks. Sun Belt is the best non-Power 5 conference, in my opinion, right now. I think people probably mostly agree on that, but a lot of good quarterback play. All right, another Sun Belt quarterback, Carter Bradley, South Alabama. Nice to see him have a bounce back game. He hasn't had the season he's probably wanted to as of yet after a really good season last year, but they crushed Joe Monroe, who has a decent little quarterback who played good last week, but South Alabama had a great game. Carter Bradley, 300 yards passing, I think 3 touchdowns. And I just found today, don't use S Bama on Twitter. It's USA. So I apologize to South Alabama fans. I'm just trying to shorten it up. All right, TJ Finley, Texas State quarterback, despite the loss in their really big game. Over 300 yards passing. I mean, that guy's he's got NFL potential for sure. Whether he comes out this year or stays in for next year, like TJ Finley is balling right now. He's a great fit in that offense. That's a good example of like just being around the coaching staff and being around the situations that put you in position to succeed. So great game for TJ Finley. Last G5 quarterback we'll mention, Andrew Peasley for Wyoming, had the win against Fresno State. Really close game. They got up big. It was like 24-7. Fresno State came back, almost won. Their quarterback got hurt, Mikey Keene, who we really like. Hopefully he's not hurt too seriously. I'm not sure exactly the case there. But Andrew Peasley, very good first half, 3 touchdown passes in the first half, and a passing attack for Wyoming that hasn't been great. The past 2 games have been getting some momentum. The past 2 games they've been throwing the ball pretty decently, so hopefully they continue for Wyoming. All right, well, that's all we got for this Week 6 QB reaction. Again, we hit up Dillon Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, Jayden Daniels, Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, a lot of the top quarterback performances, and then we covered some G5 guys as well, just trying to show them some love. So if you like this video or you listen on podcast form, sincerely, thank you. We appreciate your time and diving in, especially if you're watching this clip. But again, we talk all things quarterback, so please like, share, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. It really does help. And follow us along. We'll see you next time. Peace.